Tonight, we travel back to a city on the water, a city shaped like a flower of islands. Joined by causeways and crossed by quiet canals, we drift through a day in Tenochtitlan, the island capital on Lake Texcoco. We begin before sunrise, when the air is cool, and everything is slow. Breathe in and out, let the present day loosen and fall away. All that remains is a mirror of water, a canoe rocking gently, and a horizon that waits for light. The city is not loud, the city is steady. Wooden houses, reed mats, terraces of soil, floating gardens called chinampas, and long, straight canals that hold the night sky like dark glass. You do not need to remember anything here. There are no deadlines on the lake, only the patient rhythm of an oar, dipping and lifting, leaving round silver ripples that widen and fade. First light on the lake, very slowly, the blackness turns to blue. The blue grows pale, like breath on cool stone. From the east, the light spills across the water, and the lake becomes a wide sheet of quiet metal. A heron stands in reeds that lean like long brush strokes. Mist gathers, folds, and unfolds over the channels, then thins into nothing. Somewhere, a wooden ladle taps a jar. Somewhere, a dog sighs, turns once on a woven mat, and settles. The causeways lie still, straight lines glistening faintly with dew. Bridges cross the canals like low backs of sleeping animals. Walls of white plaster breathe out the coolness of night. You sit in a canoe, light and long, the hull smelling of wood and lake water. Under the bow, aquatic plants. Beside you, a basket with a few ears of maize, wrapped cloth, a small gourd of cacao beans. Your oar waits across your knees, smooth as a river stone. You will go to the chinampa, you will tend the plants, rinse the roots, and listen to the soil drink. For now, you glide along the canal, with barely a sound. The oar slips in, pulls, and rises, a single bead of water trembling at the tip before it falls back to the lake. A house front passes, a low doorway, a clay pot, a cord of drying herbs, a spindle leaning in a corner, a small painted image that catches the early light. None of it rushes, none of it asks anything from you. The chinampa morning, the chinampa is waiting, a long, narrow garden bed held by woven stakes and framed by willow roots that drink in the water. Its soil is rich, a careful layering of dredged lake mud and plant matter, renewed and renewed. Season after season, you moor the canoe against a stake wrapped with fiber. You step onto the garden. It is firm and springy. Rows of maize stand in patient columns. Beans look for places to climb. Squash leaves, round and cool, collect pearls of dew. You kneel. You slide your fingers under the soil. You loosen it so that air can wander there. You pluck a few weeds, slow as someone turning pages. You push a little more earth toward the base of a stalk and watch it lean back upright, satisfied. On the next row, small chilies glow like coals that forgot their heat. Nearby, amaranth, with quiet leaves. At the edge, flowers for color and for the bees. Marigold, small and bright, a soft ring of suns. From a gourd, you pour water along a furrow and listen to the tiny rush. Like distant rain, you lift a reed mat, check seedlings beneath, and lower it again so the young leaves keep their shade. Everything here repeats, seed to leaf, leaf to fruit, fruit to seed again. You are only a guest among the cycles. You learn by watching, you help by moving slowly. A willow at the corner lets its long branches bend. When the breeze moves, the leaves shiver like scales of a fish. You sit on the canoe rim, rest your feet in the cool water, and eat a small cake of maize with a smear of bean paste. The taste is simple and steady. It asks nothing grand, and gives everything needed. Breakfast calm. The sun becomes a milky coin behind a thin veil of cloud. Somewhere, a pestle taps a stone mortar, metate grinding maize into fine meal. Somewhere, a clay griddle warms with a dry hum. You open a pouch and take 3 or 4 cacao beans. You roll them in your palm, smooth and oval, with a faint, almost floral scent. Later, you will trade some for salt, or cloth, or a small bundle of dried herbs. For now, you only enjoy the simple weight of them. You tuck them away and sip a thin, warm drink, water with a whisper of roasted maize, barely sweet, barely bitter, just enough to bless the morning. A canoe passes, low in the water with bundles of reed and baskets of green onions. The polar bows his head in greeting. You lift your fingers from the oar and nod. Words are not needed when everyone understands the lake. Toward the market. It is time to go to the market. The market is in Tlatelolco, the great plaza of trade. Wide and busy. But busy in a soft way. A rolling murmur. A tide of voices that never breaks. You push away from the chinampa. Let the canoe turn with the slight current. And slip into a main canal. The water carries you like a simple promise. Along the banks, white egrets watch you pass. A boy kneels at a landing and rinses a basket until the water runs clean, then he sets it on a flat stone to dry. Ahead, the city rises. Not with towers of noise, but with terraces and squares. With walls that take the light and give it back in pale gold. Here and there, banners hang still, their colors soft with use. The causeway widens. A bridge marks the start of a busier channel. You pass under its shade. Feel a moment of coolness like the inside of a clay jar. And come out into light again. The market draws nearer. You can tell by the smell, dried chilies, toasted maize, damp baskets, a faint thread of copal incense from a nearby shrine. You can tell by the sound, the murmur of bargaining that is not a quarrel, only a careful song of give and take. The market at Tlatelolco. You moor at a landing where other canoes are tied, their prows touching like hands in greeting. You step onto the stone and follow a slow river of people toward the open plaza. The market is a city within the city. It is arranged with care. There are places for pottery, places for food, places for textiles, places for tools. There are inspectors who keep order, men and women who make sure the measures are fair, that the scales are honest, that the goods are placed where they should be placed. They do not shout, they watch. And the market hums. You pause by a stall of clay bowls. They are warm-colored, reds and browns, with simple lines, sun shapes, and flowers painted in quiet hands. You run a thumb along a rim, smooth, faintly sandy, and set the bowl down again. Next, a stall of woven cloth, cotton in soft squares, dyed with plant colors, quiet blue, modest red, a brown like rich earth. The weaver folds and folds. The sound of cloth, a gentle clap like palms meeting softly. You pass baskets of maize, yellow like straw in sunlight, white like pale shells, speckled like birds' eggs. Some ears are lean and long, some are rounded, rows tight as braids. Near them sit gourds painted with simple patterns, ladders, waves, steps. You stop where cacao beans are traded. The keeper sits behind a mat with lines of beans in neat rows. You place your small pouch on the mat. The keeper tips the beans out, counts with patient fingers, and nods. You receive a small measure of salt and a packet of herbs tied with fiber string. The equation is simple, not coins, but things whose value is familiar and calm. At the far side of the plaza, you find food. There are tamales wrapped in husks, still warm from steam. There is a thin sauce rich with chili and herb. There are squash seeds roasted until they crackle. There is a drink made from maize and water, served in a small cup with the scent of clay and a whisper of vanilla. You sit on a low stone and eat without hurry. Around you, the market speaks its language of small exchanges. How much for this? How much for that? This bundle for that bundle. This today, that tomorrow. Children count with quiet seriousness. An old woman sells flowers and says little. The flowers say enough. You buy a spindle whorl, not because you need it, but because the stone is smooth and the little carved spiral pleases you. It will sit on your shelf and catch a bit of light each morning. That is enough. You watch a group of sellers arrive, each with a stack of reed mats carried flat on their heads. They lower the mats in one motion, like birds settling, the reeds still smell of lake water. And the sun draws that scent out until the air is full of it. At the edge of the plaza, an official checks that a set of measures is true. He lifts one, weighs it in his palm, compares, and nods. The market thrives on trust woven into small acts like these, all around. Voices swell and fade. Never sharp, never cutting. If a disagreement begins, neighbors settle it with a slow talk. And the sound returns to its ordinary tide. You could stay all day, watching the city pulse without haste. But the sun is climbing, shadows pull back toward the base of walls. The plaza's floor warms underfoot. It is time to walk the streets for a while, and then return to the water, streets and doorways. You leave the market and wander along a street lined with low walls. Doorways are open to inner courtyards where vines climb thin sticks, where jars cool in their own shade, where dogs nap with their noses on their paws. You pass a schoolyard where boys trace signs on damp clay, and a teacher's voice lowers and lifts like the oar on a canal. You pass a potter turning a vessel slowly, coaxing the wall to rise with a steady hand. You pass a house where someone sings to a baby in a low, looping melody that could go on forever and always feel new. The city carries the quiet of purpose. Methods are known, tasks are shared, and the lake breathes through everything, bringing coolness where it is needed. Midday rest by water. You return to the canal and slide the canoe back into its cradling element. The water accepts you with the same small sound, the same slight shift, as if it had been waiting precisely for this moment. The midday sun is soft today, diluted by high clouds. You let the canoe drift under the shade of a willow. Leaves tick the water with tiny, almost invisible circles. You close your eyes and listen to the city's heartbeat, paddles, voices, a bowl set down, a dog's soft bark, a grinder's rhythm, a bird lifting and folding its wings. You nap without sleeping. You rest without losing the thread of the day. Time is a long cloth that does not snag. Afternoon work on the chinampa. You return to the garden bed, to the plants that do not hurry and do not wait. You prune a vine that has reached too far. You lift a squash leaf to check for insects and find only a cool triangle of shade. You stake a young maize stalk so the wind will not trouble it. You move soil from one side to another the way a blanket is tucked. Patient, precise. A neighbor pulls by, offers a greeting, and shows you a bundle of onion shoots. You trade your small herbs for 3 thin bunches, bright as green paint. You both nod and continue, leaving the exchange behind you like 2 lines on water that cross and then smooth away. At the far end of the chinampa, you sit and look at the causeway. People come and go there, a woman with a woven basket, a man with a shoulder pole and 2 clay jars, a child carrying a pail gourd. No one hurries. The city continues because no single step needs to be rushed. Toward evening, laws, order, and the gentle drum. As afternoon leans into evening, you think of how the city holds itself together. There are rules, yes, but they are carried in habits as much as in words. At the market, weights are checked. On the streets, spaces are kept clear. On the water, everyone knows how to pass, how to glide to the side, how to lower the oar so the wake is small. From the direction of a temple district, a faint drum begins, soft, like a hand on a blanket. The sound is not a summons today, only a pattern that folds the light as it thins. There may be incense somewhere, a slow ribbon of smoke that twists and disappears. There may be prayer, spoken low and steady, as day sets aside its tools. You do not go closer. You let the sound be distant and kind. You do not need details to feel the city's rhythm gather and settle. Supper, stories, and simple tools. At home, you set a clay cup on the floor. You warm a small pot on the griddle until a mild steam rises. You add a pinch of ground chili, a few leaves from the herbs you traded for, and a handful of maize meal. The smell is homely and patient. You eat with slow attention. You are neither hungry nor full. You are simply part of the evening. On the wall hangs your spindle whirl. Its carved spiral holds the last light. It is nothing more than a tool. It is also a small moon to steady the room. You tell a child a story, not of kings or battles, only of a canoe that went out in fog and found its way by listening to the drip of water from its own bow. The child asks if the canoe was brave. You say no. You say the canoe was ordinary. And that was enough. Night on the canal. Dark returns in gentle layers. The sky lowers itself like a lid. The canal becomes a dark path that needs no map. Somewhere, a night insect begins its metronome. Steady and small, somewhere. A jar cools and clicks faintly as the heat leaves it. Somewhere. A reed bed sighs when the wind changes its mind. You step outside. You sit where the stone keeps a memory of the day's warmth. Across the water, a window glows. Then dims. A paddle knocks softly against a gunwale and is quiet again. You think about the market and the garden. You think about the careful fairness of measures. About the way a leaf unrolls. About a boy rinsing a basket until the water runs clear. You let these thoughts pass without needing to hold them. They are feathers on a slow current. The city asleep. The lake awake. The city grows quiet not because it is empty, but because it is at ease. Dogs curl into themselves like commas in a long sentence. A few coals keep their small red eyes. A mat is shaken once, then lowered, then forgotten. The lake does not sleep, it only becomes more itself. It keeps its patient weight, it keeps its gentle skin. If the moon rises, it lays a white road that breaks under the whisper of every oar and heels behind it. You know that in the morning, mist will gather again. The heron will stand again, the reed mat will smell of water, the market will count and measure and trade, the gardens will need only the simplest care. Repetition is not a burden here, it is a cradle, it is the shape the day takes when it holds you without asking anything back. The long exhale, breathe in, and out, again, and out. Let the water wash the edges of thought, let the oar rise and fall. Even when you are not watching it, you have walked through a day that asks for nothing more than attention. You have eaten food that tastes like the earth and the sun. You have traded fairly, planted carefully, and said very few words. You have been part of a city that trusts the lake, and the lake that trusts the sky. If sleep is near, let it come quietly, like a canoe that arrives with no wake. If sleep is not yet near, lie still and count the soft parts of the day. The willow leaves, the quiet drum, the small bowl's rim, the patterned cloth, the spiral on the stone, the measure checked and found true, the herb bundle tied with fiber, the hush in the reed bed, the hush that returns, the hush that remains, gentle reassurance. You are safe on the water's edge, you are safe on the garden's path, you are safe in the market's order, you are safe in the city that knows how to breathe. If a thought knocks at the gate, it can wait until morning. If a worry lifts its head, it can lower it again, and fold its legs, and lie down. There is only the sound of your breath, and the memory of the oar, and the wide, patient lake. Closing images, a single torch seen across a canal, the circle it makes on stone, the shadow of a willow on water, a mat laid smooth with the palm of a hand, a clay cup turned upside down to keep away the night, a paddle wrapped in cloth, leaning in its place, a dog that sighs and becomes very still, a reed floating garden, heavy with soil, light with flowers, anchored by roots you cannot see. All of these are small, all of these are enough. Fade, breathe in, and out. When morning comes again, it will bring the same threads to weave. Or, canal, chinampa, market, supper, night, for now. Unweave, for now. Drift, for now. Sleep, dawn again. The soft reset. Morning returns as it always does. Without hurry. Without fanfare. The lake lays a pale ribbon of light beneath a sky that still remembers night. You wake to the small sound of a reed mat lifting at the edge. The dry whisper of woven fibers. A clay jar breathes out cool air when you lift its lid. You rinse your hands, and the water curls away like thin smoke turned to liquid. On the wall, the spindle whirl is a round shadow. On the floor, your sandals wait where you left them. toes pointing toward the door like calm animals. You tie them with a tug that is not tight, not loose. You step outside, and the world fits. The canoe nudges its mooring with the patience of an old friend. You set the oar across the gunwales. The wood says nothing. It has nothing to prove. Quiet crafts, feather, fiber, clay. The city wakes by hands. Hands lift, hands twist, hands press, hands smooth. A woman rolls a strip of cotton on her thigh, turning loose fiber into thread that remembers how to be straight. Her spindle drops and rises in a slow pendulum. The twist gathers, breathes, and settles into strength. Next door, a feather worker opens a low chest. Inside, feathers lie like small pieces of dawn, turquoise, green, the brown of river mud after rain, the white of a distant cloud. He chooses a single plume and lays it on a cloth. He takes resin, warm and patient, and touches it to a frame. The feather meets its place like a soft syllable in a quiet sentence. Across the lane, a potter rounds a rim with damp fingers. The curve holds a memory of the sky. He sets the bowl down, turns it a breath's width, and sets another beside it. If a day makes only a few things, that is enough, because the few are made well. The calendar in small steps. Time has large names, but you meet it in small ways. You mark a tally on a board. One more morning. You move a pebble from one cup to another. You note the sun's angle on the back wall, where a line of soot grows shiny for a moment. Someone calls, then doesn't call again. Someone hums, then forgets what they were humming, and begins a different tune. A dog stretches one leg, then the other. A living hourglass turning over and over, sand that never runs out. There are days for markets, days for repairs, days for planting, days for rest. You don't need a loud announcement to know which one this is. You feel it in the way the air holds its own weight, in the way people step, in the way tools wait. The temple district at a distance. You walk toward a higher square, but not to climb it, only to pass nearby, to borrow its stillness. Stone steps rise in layered quiet. Banners hang with the dignity of cloth that has learned how to move only when it must. Incense threads the air, slow, clean. A scent that behaves like a line drawn with a steady hand. A priest passes, his feet almost silent. He is not in a hurry to be important. The sky is already important. He lets it do that work. At the base, a woman leaves a simple offering, flowers in a small bowl of water. They do not ask to be more than they are. They float. They make color where color is needed. They make nothing loud. Causeway drift. People of the path. You take the causeway path for a while, where stone holds the memory of countless steps. A porter advances with a steady sway, the load on his back humming along his bones. He pauses, breathes, and the city pauses with him, then continues. Two children count shells with grave attention. They argue softly about whether this one is brighter than that one. They settle it by giving one to each other, which solves brightness by making it shared. A seller of gourds taps each with a knuckle. Emptiness has tones. He listens for the note that will hold liquid best. The note that will not complain when heated. The note that will not crack when cooled. He nods when he hears it, and ties a loop of fiber around the stem. Mid-morning on the water, lessons of the oar. You return to the canal because water forgives the small mistakes of land. The canoe accepts your weight without sulking. The oar gives you exactly what you ask if you ask with manners. There are 3 lessons the oar teaches. Ask quietly, ask steadily, ask only for what moves you forward. You practice all 3, and the hull writes long, tidy lines in the water that erase themselves so slowly you forget to watch them end. A fish turns under the surface, just a brief fold, like a page that knows where to open. A dragonfly writes its own letter in the air and seals it with a sudden stop. Noon shade, noon bread, heat gathers, but not unfriendly. You stop where the canal shoulder leans, where a willow leans too, making a little roof that the day approves. You open a cloth and find what you packed without thinking. A small flatbread that smells like a morning griddle, a pinch of salt, a few roasted squash seeds, a gourd of water that remembers the shape of the river bend you filled it from. You eat and do not speak. Even in your head, you let bread be bread, you let water be water, you let shade be the clock, repairs, net, roof, memory. The afternoon is for mending small things so they can remain small. A net has a place where it forgot to be a net. You teach it how to remember by tying one knot, then another, until the forgetting gives up. The roof has a reed that wants to leave before its time. You tuck it back into its family and press down with a palm until it agrees to stay. Memory itself has a thread gone thin in one corner. You strengthen it by telling a plain story to a child. The time you dropped a seed, and the seed found a crack, and the crack became a line of green. The child nods. As if this is obvious. It is obvious. Being obvious is what makes it true. Evening trade and fairness. You visit a small evening cluster of sellers near a side square. There are only a few mats. Only a few things. Only a few voices. The inspector passes with the same even gaze you saw at the great market. He weighs a measure without making it a performance. He says yes with a tilt you could miss if you didn't care. Everyone cares. No one needs to show it loudly. You trade onion shoots for a twist of dye. Hands meet without touching. Eyes agree. The exchange is not a victory for either side, it is a bridge that both can walk. Twilight drums. Household constellations. The first drum does not begin the night, it invites the day to sit down. A second drum answers from far away. Like a cousin calling through rooms that share one roof. Inside. The hearth keeps a red language. You understand every word. Be patient. Turn once. Add a little water. Lift now. Rest. On the ceiling. Smoke draws constellations that move and erase themselves. You name them for no one but yourself. The canoe and its shadow. The feather and its mirror. The bowl that knows when to be empty. Night school of listening. When the city quiets. The lake teaches its class. Syllabus. Small sounds. The syllabus never changes. The wing of a night bird. A paddle set down on a stone. A cough on a causeway 3 houses away. A reed that says yes to a breeze. A jar that cools and learns to be itself again. You pass the lesson by closing your eyes and letting each sound touch your attention once. And only once. Like a visitor who knows when to leave. Dream work on the chinampa. Some work is not for the body. You walk the garden in thought. Placing each plant where it will be grateful. You lift a leaf without lifting it. You water a row without water. You speak to the soil in the language of breath. Slow in, slow out, stay, grow, rest, repeat. The stars, if they show, are seeds scattered on a dark, generous bed. You do not need to study them to be guided by them. You only need to let them exist without asking for more. Closing the second night, you return to your mat. You straighten it with the back of your hand. You turn the cup upside down. You loosen the knot at your wrist that keeps no one out and invites no one in. You lay down. The city exhales. The lake breathes. You meet both breaths with your own. If a thought arrives late, you invite it to sit quietly by the door. You tell it will have a place at the morning table. It believes you. It goes to sleep before you do. Breathe in, and out, and in, and out. The canoe keeps its shape in the dark. The water keeps its path under every house and every garden. The day keeps its promise to return exactly as often as needed. And never more. Sleep if you wish, rest if you don't. Either way. The city holds you like a shoreline holds the lake. Not tightly. Not loosely. Perfectly. Very early hush. The city before words. Before words. There is listening. Before tasks. There is standing at the doorway and letting morning find you. The mat leaves a faint pattern on your palm. The floor is cool and even. A dog's collar clicks once. Then decides it has said enough. You open the door with the gentlest pull. Air comes in like a cloth folded twice. Somewhere a reed fence answers the wind with a sigh that is barely a sound at all. You breathe with it. And the house breathes with you. Waking tools. Tools wake the way people should wake. Slowly. Kindly, the metate waits. Heavy and patient, you lay a handful of dried kernels on its back and roll the mano forward. And back, a hush of stone on stone, a soft rain of meal gathering at the lip. Nothing rushes, nothing complains. A coil of cord remembers yesterday's knot. You untie it. Then tie it again. The way a river remembers each bend and still goes on. A shallow bowl receives a thin line of water and keeps it level. As if the lake has decided to visit for a moment. On the long canal, you step into the canoe and place the oar where it belongs, near your hands. Not yet in them. The hull lifts itself from the bank with a small thank you. You can feel more than hear. A heron crosses ahead. Its legs a drawn line. It swings two quiet thoughts that agree. On the long canal the city arranges itself in layers. Low wall. Willow. Sky. Doorway. Basket. Shadow. Banner. Stone. Open square. You pass each layer like turning a page without reading ahead. A bridge gives you shade for 3 heartbeats. You count them and do not keep the number. A father chinampa. Old roots. This garden bed is older than your memory of it. Willow roots knit the edges like a good friend's careful hands. You touch the stake where you always tie the rope. It is smooth from all the times you have done the same small thing. Here the maize stands shorter. Newer to the weather. You kneel and press the soil toward each stalk. A quiet collar for a thin neck. A line of beans tests its courage on the reed. You set 2 more reeds. And the beans pretend that was their idea. At the edge, floating weeds collect. You lift them in a basket and lay them to dry. To become soil again. To become food again. To become you again. By roots you do not need to map. A light rain. Cloud comes like a second thought that improves the first. 3 drops. Then 6. Then a pattern that the chinampa understands. You pause. And the work becomes watching. The rain is polite. It dusts leaves and quiets distant sounds into one wide sound. The willow drinks more openly. The lake smiles without moving. You cover a tray of seedlings with a reed mat. Not to hide them. Only to teach them how to wait. The canoe gathers pearls along its rim. You touch one. And it chooses to be water on your finger. Then water on the bed. Then water again. When the rain ends. It doesn't end. It keeps living on the leaves. On the path. On the lip of the jar. You let it finish its sentence. Noon errand, the salt cellar. You pole toward a small landing where a salt cellar lays out shallow cakes the color of bone and cloud. Measurements are known. Not scolded. You trade a pouch of cacao beans and a thread of dyed cotton. The seller counts by touch. Not suspicion. He shows you the smoothest piece. Free of grit. The way a host shows the quietest room. You nod. Salt returns with you like a soft promise inside its wrap. To sharpen when needed. To disappear when enough. The weaver's shade. A courtyard holds a loom in its center like a thought around which the day can gather. The weaver sits on a low stool. Her shuttle slips through the warp with the grace of a canoe crossing a narrow canal. She beats the weft with a tap that has its own weather. You do not speak. You watch the pattern choose itself line by line. 2 quiet stripes like twin causeways. A field that will someday be a garment. Then a memory. Then a cloth for something else. Everything learns to be more than one thing. She pauses to wet her fingers. You place your small bundle of onion shoots beside her bowl of dye. You both smile. Which is a trade of its own. Kitchen as compass. Back home. The hearth puts you at the center of something smooth. You grind a little more meal. Not because you must. But because the sound feels right where it is. A clay lid lifts and shows steam that has been practicing how to rise all morning. Chili clears a path through the air and makes space for the simple sweetness of maize. You add a breath of salt. You wait. Waiting is a tool. You keep it sharp. When you eat. You eat slowly enough to notice the griddles after heat becoming memory. Midday drift. Small repairs. The canoe asks for a new cord at the bow. You braid 3 strands of fiber into one. Not tight. Not loose. Your thumbs learn the pattern faster than your mind does. And that is how it should be. A basket's rim loosens. You stitch it with thin reed. Around and through. Around and through. until the circle admits it is a circle again. A child arrives with a cracked toy gourd. You melt a little resin, press it to the seam, and blow gently until it stops shining. You give it back and say nothing. The child leaves and says nothing. The world brightens a finger width anyway. Afternoon marketlet. Honest waits. In a side plaza a handful of mats makes a marketlet. 3 pots, 2 bundles of herbs, 5 carved spoons, a row of peppers like a string of small suns. An inspector lifts a standard weight and a scale pan. More ritual than rule. More reassurance than threat. He nods. The nod is the sound of a door closing gently where no wind is. You trade for a spoon with a shallow bowl that will be kind to sauces. And a handle that remembers hands. Songs of work. On the canal. 2 women wash cloth against a rounded stone. Their rhythm is not the same and so becomes music. 1, 2, rest. 1, rest, 2. A man mends a net and hums a line that keeps the knots equal. You add your own song without voice. Or ring, or through, or out, drip. The city is a choir that has forgotten to show off. Shade lesson. Wind lesson. Under a willow. Shade moves in bands. You set your back against the trunk and learn 3 things from the tree. Bend first, hold last, let go quietly. From the wind you learn 3 more. Arrive without announcing. Stay only while useful. Leave without apology. A dragonfly corrects your posture simply by existing. You sit straighter. And everything near you agrees. A cup of cacao. You roast a small measure of cacao until the shells talk in tiny pops. You grind the nibs into a paste that smells like shadow and warmth. A little water. A little foam. No sweetening today, only the dark kindness of the bean itself. You sip and let the bitterness smooth the tongue like a cool stone on a hot day. Strength arrives without ceremony. You thank it by not asking for more. Evening duties. Good edges. Evening begins at the edges. A new coolness in the doorway. A long shadow touching the heel of a pot. A bird choosing a lower branch. You sweep the threshold with a broom made of thin reeds that know how to agree with each other. You fold a cloth and see it become a smaller sky. You set a jar upright, it thanks you by being less likely to fall. Neighbors pass slow greetings over slow fences. Nothing urgent survives this hour. Urgency will have to try again tomorrow. And it will be asked to speak more softly. Drums and copal. Far and kind, from the high steps. Drums speak in syllables the lake understands. Copal smoke writes narrow rivers into the evening air. You do not go to read them. You accept that not every line is for you. And so it becomes yours anyway. A child counts drumbeats until counting becomes listening. And listening becomes rest. You nod like a witness in a quiet ceremony where truth is common and needs no guard. Supper steady. Maize meal thickens the pot's breath. Beans grant their body to the evening. Chili teaches everything how to be awake without being loud. You break bread with your hands. And your hands remember things your tongue never knew to ask. You eat facing the doorway so the night can sit with you. It is polite. It keeps to its side of the threshold until invited. Lamps. Lull. Low voices. A small lamp learns to be fire without boasting. It gives a circle and asks only for a little oil. You tell a story about planting after rain. How each seed wants its own quiet room. How each root knocks softly and is let in. How each stem rises without stepping on its neighbor. Low voices move past the house like oars in the dark. You do not turn to look. Seeing is not always the best way to know. Lake at night. City at ease. The lake wears the sky and the city wears the lake. A paddle lifts a scarf of droplets and lays it down again. Stone cools its stored noon and becomes equal with the air. You walk to the landing and sit. The canoe touches the bank twice and then decides once is enough. Your hand rests on the gunwale and feels the day finishing its last sentence. Stars. Measures. Promises. If stars appear, they appear as if they have always been there and you have only just remembered to look. You make a measure with your thumb and the length of your breath, one star to another, and find no need to write the result. Promises are better when they are short and kept. Tend the bed, stir the pot, tie the cord, sleep. You repeat them until repetition becomes cradle and cradle becomes sleep. closing drift, lay the paddle down, turn the cup, smooth the mat, extinguish the lamp with a breath you can feel in your shoulders. If a thought returns, give it a gourd to hold and tell it to wait by the door. It will think it is guarding you, let it think so. Breathe in, and out, long out. The chinampas keep their shape, the canals hold their lines. Tlatelolco remembers your footsteps and forgives you for leaving early. Sleep if you like, rest if you prefer. The city will keep the night in both hands until morning is ready. The very quiet hour. There is an hour that belongs to doorways and thresholds. It stands with you, not asking you to choose inside or outside. The lamp has gone to rest. The mat remembers your weight and forgives you for leaving it. You sit at the sill and let the lake borrow your breath. In and out. The water learns the length of your exhale and smooths itself to match. A reed touches another reed and makes the smallest sound two friends can make. Waking without rising, you wake again without moving. Your eyes open to a room that has organized itself kindly. Bowl, cord, folded cloth, or each has found its line without your help. The roof keeps last night's story in a soft smoked ribbon across the beams. You could read it, but you don't need to. It is enough to know it was written slowly. When you finally stand, you leave no rush behind you. The floor cools your feet. Your hands remember not before your thoughts do. The first errand. The gentle street. Streets at dawn are corridors of patience. A dog patrols the edge of shadow and light and decides both belong to it. A gate breathes when it opens. A basket rides a shoulder like a tame hill. You carry a small bundle of dried herbs to an elder who knows which leaf talks to which ache. She looks with eyes that count without numbers. She nods and presses 2 seeds into your palm, medicine for a day that hasn't happened yet. Canoe notes. The canoe is a quiet teacher and keeps its lessons short. Sit low, hold steady, listen first. You lower the oar, and the blade writes one word on the water, go. It writes the same word again, and again, until the canal agrees. Under a bridge, you glide into a cup of cool air. You drink it without your mouth. A distant knock, paddle on wood, answers your rhythm. 2 boats pass the way strangers pass on a path, with a nod that means everything necessary. The garden that remembers. Your chinampa keeps faith with roots. Willow stakes hold the edges like good advice. You kneel where mace has learned the size of wind. You press soil toward a stalk and feel the plant forgive yesterday's gusts. Beans climb in cheerful mistakes, spiraling not up, not down, but forward. You give them a reed and they pretend they always meant to use it. Squash leaves, wide and clever, offer shade to their own flowers. You loosen earth with your fingers, and the ground breathes the way a sleeping child breathes. Steady, soft, unafraid. Clay and water, water and clay, on the landing. You rinse a jar. The lake answers with a lace of ripples that mend themselves as soon as they are made. You set the jar in shade, mouth down, where water can forget the inside of it. A potter passes carrying bowls nested like gentle moons. You trade a tassel of onions for the shallowest one. Your thumb learns its curve and promises never to forget. Market whisper. Side square. The side square has only 5 mats today and that is plenty. A woman sells gourd ladles that already know how to be helpful. A boy stacks chilies by color until the pile teaches him about fire without burning him. An inspector weighs a measure as if he were reminding the morning to be fair. He nods. The square keeps breathing. You trade a small string of cacao beans for a handful of salt that looks like quiet snow. You tie the bundle twice, once to hold, once to remember. Noon shade lesson. The sun climbs, and shade becomes a craft. You moor the canoe to a stake that has never argued with rope. Under a willow, you share the ground with the tree's shadow. It takes nothing from you that you need. You eat a flat cake of maize, a smear of beans, a pinch of salt that turns simple into generous. You drink cool water from the gourd and let it leave your mouth slower than it entered. Across the canal, 2 voices trade a story with no plot, only errands, weather, and the day's small weights. You listen and feel lighter. The weaver's door. You carry a length of dyed thread to the weaver. Her loom is a gate that opens sideways. The shuttle passes like a fish that knows every stone of its stream, line by line. The pattern chooses restraint. Two pale bands like causeways, a field like a calm lake. You hold the cloth to the light, and the light says thank you the way light does, by arriving, measures and mercy, back at the market edge. A dispute arrives on soft feet and leaves the same way. Two sellers compare baskets of maize. They count together, then together again, and the number becomes a bridge. Nobody wins, the day does. The official staff touches stone once. It is not a threat, it is punctuation. The plaza nods and returns to its long sentence about enough. Copal thread. Drum thread. From the temple quarter. Copal writes its pale handwriting into the afternoon. A drum answers with syllables that round the corners of time. You do not climb steps. You do not seek a higher view. You let sound and scent come to you at ground level, where most things are solved. A child counts the drum beats to 20 and forgets what comes next. You say, next is listening. And the child believes you, because it is true. Kitchen geography. The hearth is a small continent with warm borders. North is the pot, south is the grinding stone, east is the stack of plates that never complain, west is the water jar that keeps its cool beneath a damp cloth. You stir slowly, so steam can learn the room. Chili opens the passageways of the evening. Beans hold their shape until it is polite not to. Maize thickens with the patience of good advice. Supper as conversation. Supper speaks a language older than argument. You answer with your hands, breaking bread to the size of your mouth's happiness. You add a pinch of salt and discover a new word for simple. Across the doorway, night waits with its hat in its hand. You invite it to sit. It takes the low stool and says nothing. Perfect manners. Lamps and lullabies. A lamp learns to hold flame the way a palm learns to hold water, carefully, briefly, with thanks. Its circle touches the floor and finds the pattern in the reed mat. You hum a line about seeds that know which way is down even in the dark. The child listens with eyes, you listen with shoulders. The song ends where breath ends and begins where breath begins. Moon on the canal, outside. The canal wears a thin road of moon. You set the canoe loose and let it drift tethered. Like a thought you are not yet ready to release. An egret stands as if it has agreed to become a statue until someone forgets to look. When you finally look away, it moves, grace contracted to a single line. The oar rests across the gunwales. Heavier with night, lighter with promise. Night library. Every house keeps a library of small sounds. A bowl tipped upright, a cord drawn through a loop, a brush of cloth against a doorframe, a single cough that admits defeat and goes to bed. You read 3 sounds and close the book. It will still be there in the morning, reshelved by silence, stars and accounts. You settle accounts with the sky. One promise kept, tended the bed. One promise kept, traded fairly. One promise kept, left the water cleaner than you found it. You owe nothing. And yet the stars forgive you anyway. You accept. Because refusing kindness is a kind of noise. Closing the house. Opening the night. You sweep a circle the size of your sleep. You turn the cup. You lay the oar where it can dream of water without getting wet. At the doorway you pause until the night nods back. You lie down. The mat agrees to carry you to morning. Breathe in, and out. Longer in, longer out. The drift that keeps its shape. Sleep approaches like a canoe with no ache. If it arrives, you will not notice. If it lingers, you will not mind. The city keeps its arms around the lake. The lake keeps its hands under the city. Between them is exactly enough room for you. If you are still awake, count the tools you did not use today. The spare cord, the extra reed, the bowl you saved for a guest, the word you did not say. Each unused thing is also care. A promise kept for a quieter hour. Count to 4 with the oar. Dip, draw, lift, drip, again, again. Promise of morning, somewhere. A jar cools and makes its soft click, the day locking its door, somewhere. A willow reshapes its shadow to fit the ground, somewhere. A fish writes a brief letter that only water can read. Morning will know where to find you. Between breath and breath, between garden and canal, between market and doorway. Until then, rest where the city meets the lake, where the lake meets the sky, where your body meets your name and both agree to be quiet. Breathe in, and out, and in, and out. A door left on the latch. Night prefers doors that are almost closed. The latch rests in its notch without insisting. A faint thread of lake air wanders in, looks around, and lies down beside the hearth's last warmth. You turn your head on the mat and the reed pattern turns with you, as if it were learning the shape of your sleep. Outside, a paddle touches a gunwale once, an agreement, not a call. Inside, a cup breathes its coolness into the room. Between the two, your breath finds its quiet lane and keeps to it. First silver on stone. The moon thinks about returning and then returns. A pale edge climbs the courtyard wall and lays a small square on the floor. A silent visiting card. You watch it grow a finger width. Then two. Then decide not to measure anything more tonight. The lake learns the moon's handwriting again. Long strokes that hesitate at every pole. Curves that mend themselves behind each canoe. You do not need to read it. You only need to know that it is kind, counting without numbers. If you wish to count, count the quiet instruments of the dark. One reed mat, one folded cloth, one string tied to the mooring post, one bowl turned down, one lamp asleep. 5 is plenty, 5 is a room at ease. You roll once on the mat and your shoulder forgives the day. You roll back and the day forgives you. The boat you do not take. A thought proposes a journey, another thought suggests staying. You let the boat remain tied and travel by listening instead. Down the canal, 2 voices trade a line about weather and onions. A story that remembers to end as soon as it has begun. Somewhere, a night bird folds the air. Somewhere, a dog shakes once, the tags on its collar speaking a language that says, enough for now. You nod into the pillow of your palm. Enough is a gentle word when it arrives at the right hour. When sleep is a slow river, sleep comes as it pleases. Not as a gate, not as a cliff, but as a river that widens so gradually you forget where bank becomes water. If you are on the bank, you sit. If you are in the water, you float. Both are fine. Your breath is the oar you barely move. Dip, draw, lift, drip. You let the rhythm continue whether you notice it or not. The lake notices on your behalf. A gardener's dream. In the space between one breath and the next, you visit your chinampa without rising. The willows bow as if to greet a friend whose name they never had to learn. You straighten a stalk with the glance of a fingertip. You water a row with 2 heartbeats. You pull a weed with a smile small enough to keep. When you turn to go, the bed remains tended. Not because you worked, but because attention is a kind of tool. Coals that remember. The hearth keeps 3 small stars. You lift the lid, see their red eyes, and lower it again. Not to darken, only to let them continue their slow thinking. A pan sighs as it gives the last of its heat to the room. In the corner, a bundle of reeds waits to become broom, mat, or roof. Whatever the morning asks most politely, you sleep better for knowing that the bundle has already agreed. The city's unsaid promise. Cities have many promises, but the best ones are quiet. The causeway will still be there. The bridge will still fold its shade. The market will measure fairly. The lake will hold. The garden will answer patience with growth. You repeat these to yourself without words. Repetition stops being a list and becomes a lullaby. A cup of night water. Your hand finds the jar as if the dark were a friend taking your elbow. Water tips and becomes a thin ribbon against clay. You drink half, then leave half. Because sharing with the future is also a kind of rest. The rim cools your lip. You set the cup down where the floor remembers it. It will be there in the morning, the way a thought is there after you stop thinking it. Feather and stone. On a shelf, a feather that has forgotten flight without sorrow. A spindle whirl that has learned to be moon by simply catching light. Both are tools, both are ornaments, both are teachers. They explain, without speech, the art of being more than one good thing at a time. You listen. Understanding requires no answer, a soft patrol. You step to the threshold and look along the canal. A single torch passes. Held low. Not hunting for trouble. Only reminding the night that people live here. The flame writes a brief sentence on water and ends with a courteous dot. You return inside and close the door to the same small width as before. A latch that repeats itself becomes a hymn. Star lesson. If the sky is clear, choose 3 stars and call them canoe. Or, and seed. If clouds arrive, let the lesson be about patience instead. Either way, you learn. You align your breath with a distance no one else can see. The city aligns with you without knowing it has done so. This is what good cities do. The hour of easy forgiveness. This is the hour when everything is easier to forgive. A knot tied too tight. A word spoken too quickly. A row watered twice. A plan left half made. You lay each on the reed mat the way a trader lays wares on a square of cloth. You sort them by weight. You find they're lighter than you remembered. You fold the cloth and put it away. Lake arithmetic. The lake performs calm arithmetic. Wind plus willow equals ripple. Moon minus cloud equals path. Or times patience equals distance. You divided by worry equals rest. You need not check the sums. Water shows its work. A neighbor's cough. A city's reply. A cough. Then silence. Then a door eased open for a breath of air. The city hears and answers by staying gentle. No dog barks, no voice calls, no shoe hurries. Consideration is a civic craft. You are proud to live where it is practiced. The quiet ledger, in your mind. A ledger waits. Maize tended, beans tied, salt traded fairly, water returned clean. You add 1 line for the night. Nothing broken by haste. You close the ledger and it closes you. The way a blanket closes a body and leaves it whole. The first bird. The last star. Somewhere a first bird decides that morning is a subject worth discussing. It speaks 1 note and then allows silence to answer. The last star listens, nods, and leaves without being seen to go. You draw 1 longer breath. A trial piece of dawn, and find it fits. Unlatching morning, you open the door the width of a palm. Night does not mind leaving. Day does not mind waiting. They pass like courteous travelers on a narrow bridge. The canal is the color of pewter that remembers sky. Your canoe leans toward you, as if asking for the oar by name. You nod to everything that kept its watch. The mat, the jar, the feather, the stone, the lake. Breathe in, and out. Another day stands beside you, not demanding, only ready. The soft beginning of tasks. Morning stands nearby without speaking. You answer by tying your sandals. By folding the sleeping cloth once. Then once again. A cup turns upright. A door learns to be more open than closed. You touch the oar the way you would greet a quiet friend. It remembers your hands before you remember yesterday. Out on the water. Mist writes its slow alphabet. You read only the vowels and leave the consonants for later. Market day signs. Market days announce themselves in gentleness. More footsteps on the causeway but none in a hurry. 2 extra canoes gliding low with baskets. A coil of rope set near the landing. As if the morning wanted to tie itself neatly, you slide along the canal. A woman passes with flowers that look like morning caught imagining itself. A boy guards a stack of reed mats with a seriousness that needs no audience. The quiet balance of trade. At Tlatelolco. Space arranges people the way water arranges boats. Stalls unroll like calm sentences. Measures are set out where eyes can see them. You notice small mercies. A shade cloth pulled a handspan farther to shelter a neighbor. A bowl returned shinier than it was borrowed. You trade a small pouch of cacao beans for a clay ladle. The seller taps it, thin, true, uncracked, then nods as if approving the morning itself. You nod back. 2 approvals make a bridge. Textiles, threads, and time. The textile corner hums without sound. Hands move like oars. Back and forth. Never tired because they are not asked to hurry. You choose a narrow strip of cotton dyed the brown of wet earth. It will serve as a tie for jars. A band for hair. A promise around a bundle. The weaver weighs your offering and gives change in a way that proves fairness can be quiet and still be complete. Breakfast at the edge of the plaza. You sit where a step remembers shade. Steam rises from a small pot, tamales sigh inside their husks. A pinch of salt. A hint of chili. A mouth that is content to taste slowly. You eat as if the morning were a guest and this were the last good food left. Not from fear, but from gratitude. Nearby, a seller adjusts 3 gourds so they stop wobbling. The world becomes a little more balanced for everyone. Leaving the market the way you entered, you retrace your steps without checking them. The plaza keeps its promise to remain itself. Inspectors watch as if watching were a craft. A child counts seeds in pairs and never reaches the end. You do not help. Reaching the end would spoil the pleasure. Long canal. Low voices. The canal accepts the weight of your canoe. The way a shoulder accepts a shawl. 2 men speak across the water about weather. Then stop speaking and let weather answer. Your oar works in 4 parts. Dip. Draw. Lift. Drip. The rhythm forgives small mistakes by smoothing them until they no longer remember being mistakes. Chinampa, the gentle order of rose. Back at the garden. You kneel where the ground keeps last night's cool. Maize stands as a choir of green throats. Beans try and you knot around a reed and look proud of the attempt. Squash sprawls like a map that enjoys being inaccurate. You loosen soil with fingers. Not tools. Because fingers learn faster. A single weed comes up whole. You thank the roots for their courtesy and set them aside to become future soil. Watering like weather. From a gourd. A thin stream folds into furrows and disappears. You move the water with the discretion of rain that knows it is a guest. A willow leans to watch and learns nothing new, which is its way of lending approval. You cover seedlings with reed and lift the edges a finger width so air can speak softly underneath. The bed understands, repairs in 3 movements. A stake has loosened where bank meets water. You set it deeper with slow pressure. As if discussing the matter instead of insisting. A cord has frayed near the bow. You untwist the tired parts and let new fibers take their place. The smallest apprenticeship. A basket's rim needs 1 more pass. Around and through. Around and through. A circle becomes itself again. Mid-morning pause. Shade arithmetic. Shade plus breeze equals enough. Enough plus stillness equals rest. Rest plus water equals listening. You sit on the canoe's rim. Feet cooled by the lake's patience. A dragonfly writes its brief note above the surface and pins it with a stop. You do not try to read. Unread perfect things are allowed to remain perfect. A visit from a neighbor. A neighbor pulls near with onion greens and a question that is only half a question. You trade a strip of cloth for 2 neat bundles and the pleasure of being useful. Conversation is a path without hills. How the wind turned yesterday. How the beans took the new reed. How a child laughed at an empty gourd because it made the right sound. Paths like this make good neighbors. The courtyard of clay. You stop at the potter's courtyard where bowls sun themselves in ordered rows. He lifts one by its rim and listens to the note it makes. A sound like a promise kept. You buy nothing. You leave with the feeling of having purchased calm. Sometimes that is a fair trade. Noon nears. Kitchen waits. Back home. The metate is already half a song. You roll the mano and the morning surrenders its last edges. Meal gathers like pale sand at the shore of the stone. A pot begins to think. First with a small steam. Then with a clear idea. You season the idea with chili and mercy. Lunch becomes inevitable. Eating as agreement. You eat what the day decided. Maize that traveled from seed to hand by very short roads. Beans that practiced patience. Greens that remembered the night's coolness. Every mouthful is a handshake with the hours that carried it here. You shake hands slowly. After meal silence. Bowls stacked. Cloth folded. Fire lowered to a red whisper. You rest against a wall that knows how not to hurry. Inside your ribs. A lake smaller than the outside lake moves once. Then once again. And then decides to be still. If sleep visits, you let it sit. If it does not, resting is also a guest. And you make it welcome. Afternoon errand, the die seller. The die seller keeps colors like patient secrets. He opens a pouch to show a red so modest it becomes luxurious. You trade a few cacao beans and a favor promised for next week. The kind of credit that keeps friends instead of ledgers. He advises fewer drops than you think. You promise to obey. Obedience is restful when the advice is good. Loomlight, at the loom. The afternoon stands still long enough to be woven into the cloth. You pass the shuttle and beat the line. Pass and beat. A heartbeat with long breaths between. The pattern gathers like a story that trusts you not to rush the ending. When you stop, the cloth holds your pause as part of itself. Causeway edges. You walk the causeway edge the way a fingertip walks a book's leather. Water on one side. City on the other. Neither jealous. Both content. A porter rests and looks at a single cloud until it becomes several. You look too. It becomes several for you as well. Generosity is contagious. Evening begins with water. You rinse a bowl not because it is dirty but because evening likes to see its face in clean clay. A gourd fills, tips, and returns to level as if practicing a ceremony. You set things where they belong. And belonging repays you with quiet. Drums the color of copal, from the temple quarter. Drums soften the corners of time. Copal folds into the air and teaches walls how to be lighter. You stand where sound is not loud. Where scent is not strong. The perfect distance for reverence without strain. A child counts to 12 and then to 12 again, proving that cycles are comfort when they are gentle. Supper. Plain and true. Beans agree to become part of maize. Chili agrees to keep everyone awake just enough. You add salt like a short blessing. A bowl becomes warm. And so do your hands. You eat facing the door so night can join the meal. Night eats nothing and leaves satisfied. Lamps. Stories. Shoulders. A lamp enlarges the room by making darkness friendly. You tell a story about a seed that mistook a pebble for a mountain and grew around it. The child smiles at the clever seed. You smile at the clever pebble. Both were correct. Shoulders drop a finger width. The day is almost finished being useful. Canal under moon. House under breath. You stand at the landing and let the moon lay a silver road where you will not travel. The canoe asks nothing, the rope answers nothing. Agreement is sometimes this easy. Inside. The house keeps your breath company. You hear it in the bowl set down. In the cloth settling after a fold. In the reed mat smoothing under a palm. Closing measures. You count what does not need numbers. Tasks done. Tools resting. Water clean. Neighbors near. Body kind. You put the count away like a tool without dust. It will be where you left it tomorrow. Sleep stowaway. The latch sits lightly. The room learns to be darker in comfortable steps. You lie on the mat and align your breath with the oar's old lesson. Dip. Draw. Lift. Drip. If sleep arrives, let it claim the canoe and steer it nowhere. Nowhere is a good harbor. If you wake, do this. Should you wake, touch 3 things without lifting them. The mat at your shoulder, the bowl near your hand, the cord by the door. Each will say, still here. You will answer, me too. Ledger of small kindnesses, before the last thoughts leave. Add these to the ledger. Returned a borrowed gourd cleaned. Moved the shade a handspan for a neighbor. Thanked the seedling by not overwatering. Left room on the canal for a slower boat. Close the ledger. It closes you. Promise of another ordinary day. Morning will come like a careful porter with a balanced load. The market will count. The garden will breathe. The lake will remember. You will be asked for nothing loud. And you will give exactly that. Breathe in, and out. Long in, long out. Sleep if you wish. Rest if you prefer. Tenochtitlan holds both with the same steady hands. The hour that softens edges. Afternoon has a way of rounding corners. Doorways stand less like rules and more like invitations. A jar forgets heat and remembers cool. Your hands rest where they are and discover that rest is a place, not a task. You breathe as if polishing the air. In. And out, until the room shines without light. Courtyard drift. In the courtyard a broom leans in a posture that suggests patience. A coil of cord keeps its circle true. On the sill, a shallow dish holds a little water. Just enough for a bird to imagine landing. A neighbor's laugh floats over the wall. Shaped like a clay bowl, wide, useful, unbreakable. You do not need to know the joke to enjoy the echo. Causeway slow walk. You take the causeway with the deliberate step of someone carrying nothing. Boats slide beneath. Causeway above. Two parallel sentences that agree on meaning. A porter pauses and shifts his load the smallest distance possible. The act is so minor it becomes art. You salute with a glance. He answers with the briefest nod. An exchange of respect that spends no words. The basket mender, under a bit of shade. The basket mender sits with reed and calm, around and through. Around and through. He returns circles to themselves. You watch a broken rim relearn wholeness knot by knot. You hand him a basket whose lip has forgotten. He repairs not the thing, but the confidence of the thing, when he passes it back. It looks relieved. You feel the same. A visit with the herb keeper. The herb keeper's stall is a low cool cave of scents. Dried leaves that sound like rain when touched, roots with the color of helpful earth, flowers that remember the exact hour they were picked. You trade 3 cacao beans for a twist of something that soothes the chest at night. Her fingers fold the packet like a blessing you can carry. You promise to drink it warm and slowly, which is how most help prefers to be received. Canal reflections. You return to water. The canal is a quiet ledger of reflections. A willow's handwriting, a white wall's steady thought, a banner's single, undecided syllable. Your oar writes one careful line and erases it with the next. Learning and unlearning hold hands and keep good balance. Chinampa listening. The garden doesn't ask for you, it welcomes you. You kneel where the soil keeps last night's promise of cool. Maize whispers in leaves that sound like thin pages. Beans practice their small braids. Squash settles its wide palms over the day's remaining heat. You listen for problems and hear instead. We are fine, we are growing, thank you for asking. You answer by doing very little very well. Little weather. Clouds speak briefly and kindly. A wind arrives without sharp opinions. You lift the reed edge of a shade just enough for air to pass like a guest who knows where the cups are. On the far bank, a heron decides it is time to be a statue again. This is not stubbornness, it is agreement with the hour. Tools in their places. You check the small places where calm hides. The knot at the mooring post, square and modest. The gourd stopper, seated but not wedged. The paddle, edge sound. Shaft smooth. Lesson memorized. Everything answers your hand by being exactly where it promised to be. Trust accumulates like silt. Useful and quiet. Side key marketlet. At a side key. 5 mats are enough for a market. 2 stacks of bowls. A twist of salt. A rope of chilies. A tiny heap of obsidian flakes that remember fire. An inspector watches with the calm of a full jar. You trade a strip of cotton for a spoon whose shallow bowl will be kind to sauces. The seller smiles with the corner of the mouth that knows a day is going well. The potter's cooling row. You drift past the potter's courtyard. Bowls rest in 2 neat rows. Cooling like polite guests after dancing. He taps one. A note clear as a promise kept. You say, "Not today." With your palms, he says, "I understand." With his chin. Trade also means knowing when to wait. Kitchen weather. Part 1. Back home. The hearth forecasts supper. A metate becomes low thunder. Steady and kind. You grind a little maize not because you must, but because the sound fits the room's shape. A pot accepts water and begins to consider what it could become. Chili reminds it to be brave but not rude. Salt offers its short speech and sits down. A pause for story seeds. A child appears with pockets of questions like small pebbles. You empty 3 on the mat. How does a bean know which way is up? How does the lake remember the moon? How does a boat keep not sinking? You answer with demonstrations that use no words. A finger near a tendril. A bowl of water under a bright spot. The palm on the gunwale. Understanding nods and returns to the pocket. Evening angle. Shadows lengthen into good advice. Stone cools to the exact temperature of contentment. The lake turns from mirror to ink. You sweep the threshold as if tracing a circle around sleep. Dust and day both settle. Drums at the right distance, from the temple quarter. Drums practice the art of enough. They do not command, they accompany. Gopal finds the doorway and stops there. Like a messenger who knows the house is resting, you count to 8 and forget why you were counting. That is the number you needed. Supper that knows your name. Beans become tender without losing themselves. Maize thickens into a comfort you can hold. Chili lifts the edges so the middle feels even warmer. You eat facing the open door so night can sit where it prefers. On the cool step with patient knees, you thank it for coming early and staying late. Lamp geography. A lamp maps the room with a circle of soft certainty. It discovers the curve of a bowl, the grain of a paddle, the small hill of a folded cloth. You let the map be incomplete on purpose. Mystery is restful when it's kind. Canal under stars. At the landing, stars copy themselves in water and take no credit. The canoe agrees to be where you left it. You lower a hand to the surface and meet a cool that thinks well of you, somewhere. A fish turns a page only it can read. You don't interrupt. Ledger of quiet work. In your mind's ledger, shaded a neighbor's stall, taught a reader better not, left room on the canal, returned water to the lake. Unchanged. You underline nothing. The page is already sure of itself. House that breathes with you, inside. The house adjusts its breathing to yours. A cloth settling, a lid cooling, a mat remembering. If there is a squeak, it occurs once and decides that is sufficient for the week. You answer by loosening your shoulders one finger width at a time. Bedtime herb. You warm the packet from the herb keeper in a small cup. Steam rises with the posture of forgiveness. The taste is almost nothing, which is how sleep prefers to be invited. You drink half now, and half becomes a promise for later. Stories without lessons. You tell a story about a seed that grew around a pebble and became not crooked, but interesting. Another about a canoe that learned to drift like a thought and therefore arrived rested. They end where breath ends and begin where breath begins. No morals posted. None needed. Closing the day. Opening the night. You turn the cup. You lower the lamp. You check the latch. Not as a worry but as a ritual of completion. At the threshold you pause until the night nods back. The nod is slow. And so is yours. The oar's lullaby. On your mat you borrow the oar's measure. Dip. Draw. Lift. Drip. Between each word. A space wide enough to lie down in. Your ribs practice being a small canoe. Your breath practices being a small lake. Both are excellent at their work. If wakefulness visits. If wakefulness visits. Give it a task. Count 3 textures you can feel without moving. The reed under shoulder, the cloth near hand, the cool of air at the ankle. Wakefulness enjoys work and soon goes elsewhere. The city's whisper network. A paddle taps a hull once 2 canals away. A door closes like a page turned with care. Footsteps pass in pairs. The city communicates sufficient comfort to everyone who is listening. You listen. Comfort arrives. Lake arithmetic. Revisited. Wind plus willow equals ripple. Ripple times moon equals path. Path divided by distance equals peace. Check the math by closing your eyes. It balances without proof. The last task, do nothing. Some days end with great deeds. Today ends with none. This makes it a masterpiece of ordinary time. Do nothing. Watch nothing. Need nothing. Let the night perform its skilled labor of quiet. Drift proper. You are the length of one breath long. You are the width of one heartbeat wide. You are exactly the correct size for the mat, the room, the house, the city, the lake. Tenochtitlan holds you as easily as a bowl holds water. Not tightly, not loosely, perfectly. Promise of morning. Again, morning will come wearing the same calm face. Market measured, garden breathing, water honest, people kind. You owe it nothing except the sleep you are about to give. Fade with images. A willow mapping shade. A bowl cooling on stone. A banner remembering color. A reed mat learning your outline. A canoe that dreams at its mooring and does not drift away. Hold one image. Let 4 go. Hold none. Sleep holds you. End peace. Breathe in and out. Slow in, slow out. The day folds itself twice. Then once more. and slides into the small wooden box where you keep simple, excellent things. When you open it tomorrow, it will be ready to be ordinary again. Which is to say, perfect.